I always feel like we should have that ticker tape sound or something.
We can make a list.
A list. We can make a list. We do, in fact, make lists constantly.
We can make a tape. We can make an audio intro, is what I'm trying to say.
Is that what you're trying to say?
Play one after another. Oh, Lord help me. Okay, but we have our introductory plan.
Yes. There's that.
Yep. Making authentic airplane sounds as they roar around the globe. Scooping up news. Yeah, like that.
This just in.
For the third member of the night, he goes dun 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 dun. Then you say the news. That's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, so
I know it from Clockwork Orange.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's where I got most of my classical music training. Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm Ani.
I'm Teresa Mitchell.
You need to come into the frame. Okay. Into the frame.
Yep, Ani Haynes, the witch over there, and so I would like to start off with. I want to talk about birth control. Today, the U.S. yesterday, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved Opill, Norgestrel, a tablet for non-prescription use to prevent pregnancy, the first daily oral contraceptive approved for use in the U.S. without a prescription. Don't even have to go to the doctor. Approval of this progestin-only oral contraceptive pill provides an option for consumers to purchase oral contraceptive medicine without a prescription at drugstores, convenience stores, and grocery stores, as well as online. The timeline for the availability and price of this non-prescription product is determined by the manufacturer. Other approved formulations and dosages of other oral contraceptives will remain available by prescription only. Patricia Cavazzoni, a director of the FDA's Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, said, quote, "Today's approval marks the first time a non-prescription daily oral contraceptive will be an available option for millions of people in the United States. When the drug is used as directed, daily oral contraception is safe and is expected to be more effective than currently available non-prescription contraceptive methods in preventing unintended pregnancy," end quote. Now, of course, the unintended pregnancy forced birth group is going absolutely ape over this. And I haven't even really got their stuff together. Just enough time to splutter things like it's unnatural. It'll cause depression. It'll cause suicide. Suicide will go up. It'll cause acne. You'll get acne. Say the Christians.
It's unnatural. I love that part.
Unnatural acne. So it's out there. It totally got them by surprise. It pleases me.
I just hope to God that the people that say it's unnatural never take Advil. I'm just saying, I hope, that they follow in a logical, consistent fashion.
Yeah.
Because they're known to.
Hair shirts and the like, if you ask me. So, I want to talk today about also Taiwan. I'll have a little rant about Taiwan later with another headline. But right now I want to talk about corruption, which is so intensely out of control in the post-Trump USA that lawyers are begging judges simply to obey the laws. But let me set the tone here. The most recent example of poor Venmo security comes from Rajan Vashist, a former aide to Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas. The Guardian tracked down Vashist's Venmo account and found several payments in 2019 from lawyers who had been Thomas legal clerks. The amount of the 2019 payments is unknown, but the descriptions include Thomas's Christmas party, CT Christmas party, and CT Xmas party. The lawyers had gone on to work at high-profile law firms, and some of them had later argued cases before the Supreme Court of the United States, including on issues like affirmative action. Justice Thomas has also faced new scrutiny over new revelations by ProPublica over his relationship to Harlan Crow, the Texas billionaire whose largesse over more than 2 decades has included vacations on a super yacht, private school tuition for the great nephew that the justice is raising as his son, and the purchase of his mother's home. None of this, and the homes next to it, just to make her comfortable. None of this is reported by the justice in his report your goodies annual rules, and the revelations have renewed calls for tighter Supreme Court ethics rules. Oh, by the way, he's gotten the Super Bowl ring. That's one of the things we've discovered most recently.
What?
Clarence Thomas has received as one of his little perks a Super Bowl ring.
I see. Yeah. You don't get those in your cereal.
No,
usually,
you don't
no.
get them unless you're a player in the Super Bowl, and then you run out of money and you sell your Super Bowl ring for a lot of money, then somebody else can have it, and it's a very expensive thing that you can say, look, I have money, and the Super Bowl winner person no longer does.
Or the Supreme Court. Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's good.
Can you imagine you got the Super Bowl ring? It's like, wow, I have a Super Bowl ring, not because I earned it. And the person who earned it is, desperate, and I have it. And
okay, all right.
And so what's the right thing to do with it, right? I mean, it's like a ring of sadness. And the only
That's not exactly how billionaires look at it,
I know,
is it?
but the only real thing to do with it,
because they're really not well.
Well, I know. The only real thing to do with it would be to give it back to the person who actually earned the Super Bowl ring. Say, here's your ring back. Hope you have better times financially. But no, they gloat over things like that. You're right.
Because they're not well. I'm just going to say.
They're getting used to this. So, David Armiak, executive director at PR Watch, and Arne Pearson, another executive director, right? The Center for Media and Democracy filed an emergency motion with the Ohio Supreme Court yesterday, asking the court to stop Attorney General Dave Yost's office from further destroying its controversial communications with the Republican Attorneys General Association and the Rule of Law Defense Fund. Now, that's a bunch of organizations and characters that you don't know. So let me explain that they're in court, and they're trying to establish that it's not okay to hide communications between major donors. A senior Yost lieutenant gave sworn testimony in a deposition that he is routinely destroying those communications, even though they are covered under discovery order CMD 1 in 2021, now a pending appeal in Supreme Court. So if you go to court and you need information about your opponent, you go through a process called discovery, and you notify them that they, for example, cannot destroy the videotapes that show them beating their opponent in the head, sort of thing. And if they don't supply them, then that's contempt of court. But then the court has them. And here's the thing: it's like, you never think about this. What if the court destroyed them? What if the court, on behalf of the head beater, was so incredibly corrupt that they then just destroyed those videotapes and said, oh, well, gosh, we didn't know. We couldn't do that. Of course, they can't do that.
And so this, go ahead and say what is it that has happened again?
Well, so requests to instruct the AG staff to stop destroying the data were rejected by Yost's office yesterday. The emergency motion and supporting documents were filed, and CMD's motion asked the court to order Attorney General David Yost to, and then I will give the details, but what they ask is for them to act like an ordinary judge who does not do criminal things in the process. Anyway, instructed staff to preserve and refrain from destruction of emails, text messages, and other documents, whether stored in personal devices and accounts or official ones, that may be responsive to the discovery request at issue in this appeal. No such order should be necessary, as this obligation arose as soon as the requests were served, and measures to collect and preserve potentially responsive documents should have been taken automatically. But attempts by appellee's counsel to affirm this with appellant's counsel have been unsuccessful. It's hard to put in words how frustrating this is as an attorney to see the office that is supposed to be enforcing the laws of Ohio decide that it is above the law. That's according to CMD's lawyer, Jeffrey Vardaro at the Gitz Law Group. quote, letting employees destroy records that a court has ordered to be turned over in a lawsuit is not something our justice system should tolerate from anyone, much less the elected officials who puts his name on a Sunshine Laws manual every year. And end quote. And guess who appointed that judge?
Who?
Mr. Trump and the
I
GOP.
see.
So this is what happens. I mean, we've seen Trump act in such a corrupt manner and not be called out on he did several things every day. It's like he was purposely stomping on rule of law during the 4 years he was in office. And I think this is one of the results, is that, his minions got the idea that no laws are valid that they cannot immediately be called out for and punished for.
No laws are valid that they can be immediately called it.
No laws are valid unless they can immediately be called out and punished for them. In other words, rule of law for the sake of law, rule of law for the sake of believing in the rule of law is now dead.
Yeah, rule of law died in this country. It's true.
Yes, and his appointees are simply criminals who will do whatever it takes to protect their clients.
Well, and so how do we steer the ship back towards the rule of law? And really, did we ever think we'd have to say that? There were some things. I have not been enthralled with this country for most of my life because I've read history and I know about our imperialist past. And yet the level of corruption in the court system at this time is really staggering.
Yeah, as longtime, anarchists, it did not occur to us that the rule of law would become so corrupt as to be meaningless. I mean, it was part of the fabric of the society that we were addressing.
Magna Carta, we're talking 900-year-old stuff. It's just kind of, there was a big step back there. There was a big step back.
Yeah,
all right.
People who don't understand what anarchy is, who don't understand what political anarchy is, will say, well, that's what you want. There's no rules. Which just goes to show how stupid those people are, because I'm not going to bother to explain that right now. But
Yeah, all I can say is anyone that says that has never been to an anarchist meeting. There is more process and procedure in any meeting of anarchists than I would ever care to.
Yes. Well, that's what it's about. I mean, it's anarchic in the sense of we create rules and laws, and we do not consider the rules and laws themselves sacred, but we create them to prevent, kings and hegemons. We were anarchos. We were against the king.
We are against hierarchy. Yeah.
So we have rules and laws and understand what's going on, instead of just some arbitrary asshole telling us
agreed
that we have
upon
to stand on our
standards.
heads.
Let's just say.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Changing topic. Now going into anti-war mode. China's military has been on a surge of activity around Taiwan this week. This is from CNN. Sending dozens of warplanes past the median line of the Taiwan Strait and into the key regions of the island's air defense identification zone. The People's Liberation Army activity has a range of implications, none of them positive for Taiwan or cross-strait stability. According to figures from Taiwan's Defense Ministry, 38 PLA aircraft were detected around the island in the 24 hours ending at 6 a.m. And then it goes on to talk about just how many aircraft are flying over the island. And since most of us, including me, don't really have a good bracket for understanding how many aircraft is too many, let me just explain it like this. For years now, China has been saying that they're going to take Taiwan. And part of the response is, well, they'd sure have to get a lot of ships into the strait, and they'd sure have to get a lot of aircraft carriers ready to do something like that. Well, they've been doing that. They haven't been doing it in the way that the U.S. expected. They've been building up airstrips on islands in the Taiwan Strait. And they've been building more submarines and launch facilities near the coast, and they've been extending the range of their aircraft. And what I'm getting around to saying is they're ready to go to war. And China always manages to pull this off. It's like in the case of when they invaded Korea, and a couple of other cases when I read history of Chinese wars, they are really good at launching their war before people are ready for it or expect it. And part of it is them saying, oh, well, you better watch out or we'll get angry, and then making it look like they're talking about years from now. They're not talking about years from now. They are pretty much ready to launch their war and may do so at any moment. And it's a heck of a thing to say, but I feel pretty confident in saying that. So let me say that I don't think the U.S. should just let it happen. I think the best thing would be for the U.S. to say, okay, we see that you can do this, right? You're ready to run over Taiwan. Let's talk for a minute. And what the USA should say is, we have, been with Taiwan in so many ways, and they have, been very much influenced by our culture, and our institutions and a lot of our defense capability, and all this stuff is well planted in Taiwan. Therefore, we don't want you to do this, but we see that you can. And so we would like to have this done peacefully. We would like to bring in the Taiwanese and have them be able to say, this is how we would like a reunification to go, or, they have the right to say, we don't want it to happen at all. The problem is that, well, let me get into my notes here. I'm really a very loyal person. That hasn't always turned out to be a good thing personally. So the phrase loyal to a fault comes to mind if I think of people in my long life who have done cheap and nasty things to me and my other friends. But I think there's some virtue to be considered there. Not that anyone should have blind loyalty. Rather, I believe that people can err and still be essentially good. And or I believe that people can often develop a stronger character if circumstances allow. I also believe this about the nation I live in. Here, the indices are so much broader and more complex than a person that the analogy is simply inadequate, but I'll use it for a start. I'm a loyal American, by which I mean I am a USA citizen, but to be loyal to the USA as it currently exists is simply to sign on to a horrific centuries-long legacy of brutal imperial exploitation and capitalism, and that exploitation and the cruelty that drives it is not a quirk or a mistake. So what I mean is, I know several Americans in my family and friends, and I love them. And there are others I know less well and who are brilliant and compassionate people, and I'm loyal to their safety and survival and prosperity and liberty. And so it is, I have not succumbed to the occasional consideration over the last half century that I should aid the people of the world by developing a sophisticated and effective method of destroying the USA. Ain't gonna do it. But if I love Americans, then I am surely obligated to be a persistent and effective dissenter and critic. I identify as a socialist or a little c commie, depending on the situation, and I'm on a subreddit social media conversation in which a poll was taken identifying China as much more dedicated to education and prosperity and socialism for its own people, which it certainly is, and inviting me to say which side I would take in the event of war. So this took less than a second to decide, less time than it takes to write this sentence. Of course, I support Uncle Sam. What a ridiculous question, yet I see by far most responders chose China. So in the first place, it's a meaningless gesture. Let me address this to them, except to the secret police, dummies, because no commies here, or almost none, are going to sell their Hyundai and ship off to Beijing to fight the Taiwanese. But if they did, it would be criminal and obnoxious. Let me explain why. First, our obligation, if we care about socialism and humanity, is to effectively poke the beast we live in the belly that we live in. We dissent, and we do it in effective ways, and it prevents, slows, or shortens the U.S. involvement in a Taiwan-China war. That's the right thing to do, not to fly off and murder a Taiwanese citizen. Furthermore, while I will acknowledge that with its cruel faults, China is not, getting ahead of myself. Furthermore, while I will acknowledge that with all its cruel faults, China is in many ways superior to the USA, not least because they do not maintain a racist police state with more in prison than any other nation as we do, China is wrong to attack Taiwan. If this discussion were happening 30 years ago, I would be saying that China should work harder to convince and even to sociologically subvert the population of Taiwan, which is indeed a renegade province, to join the mainland as welcomed prodigal sons and daughters. And actually, they did make some efforts in that manner, and the U.S. fought back hard, maybe too hard, against it. But Xi Jinping is in the ascension now for some years, and the story has changed. Taiwan is to be invaded as an enemy collaborated, to be cruelly stomped and punished for indefinite time for being with the criminal, evil United States. So it's not a matter of do they join China? They don't get to join anymore. What China's aircraft are getting ready to do is to turn Taiwan into a giant prison, and a really nasty, torturing prison too. The Chinese will attack suddenly, much sooner than they are signaling, with new equipment in great numbers and with great genocidalist force. The U.S. should show that they understand this fully, develop countermeasures to China's swarming tactics and EMP-based communications denial strategy, and periodically parade down the Taiwan Strait and other nearby waterways, not just with a frigate now and then, but with Shkval updated torpedo boats, destroyers, aircraft carriers, and submarines. Lots of submarines. That's the best chance for peace, just like for the next few days, basically to scare the living crap out of them. Biden needs to withdraw this, scare the crap out of the Pyongyang apparatus, quit messing with the North Koreans, and bring the whole massive multi-billion-dollar flying hoo-ha machine over to Taiwan, where it could actually do some good. And once doing that, negotiate in good faith with all parties to prevent a war. And I've brought forth all the details on that because I really do believe we are on the edge of war with Taiwan, and the way it's set up to go right now is about as ugly as it could be. Now, the militarists in the United States will just be crying over this because the Chinese are set up, as I said, with their hardened islands, which are much better loaded with ammunition than people realize. They will sink U.S. aircraft carriers, and people associated with the military will be crying and crying, and people who lose their sons and daughters will be crying, of course. Let's avoid this. I think part of the problem is that the corporate news media simply bumbles along with whatever sells. And there's a lot to be said about just how poorly that serves the United States and how it adds to a non-educated and non-participating pseudo-democracy. There's a lot to be said about that. But since that's the way it is, I would like to encourage you or anyone listening to me right now to look up the details, understand the facts, understand how close war is, and make efforts to prevent it. No war with Taiwan, please. So that's the end of our rant.
I see. No war is pretty much where I leave it. We have to, as a globe, right? As a world united, we have to come out united against war because we have advanced in weaponry to the point of our own annihilation. We cannot, we cannot go blindly into wars anymore. And I appreciate that.
I didn't mention nukes, but of course that's the worst and the biggest aspect of it.
Well, I mean, and we're getting into superpower showdowns, right? And that's just it's not sustainable. It's not good. It is in fact evil. War is an evil on this planet, and really, as you all know already, people are the ones that ultimately pay the heaviest price. Governments, they just tally up, accounting for territories, etc. People are the ones who lose our loved ones, who lose our own lives, who lose our homes. War, it's bad. Okay, so with that all said, I want to look at the summer happening around us. We are experiencing global climate change in a way that is terrifying, right? For folks that were waiting for climate change to come home to roost, we are certainly seeing that. We have for the last several years, but in much more isolated ways than in watching the northeast part of the states have catastrophic flooding, while New York and the eastern seaboard had extreme smoke warnings, alerts, particulate matters in the air that made it extraordinarily unhealthy to breathe for the last, for a few weeks in the last month, based out of the wildfires in Canada. And so we are seeing the impacts of climate change here at home. I believe it was Judy Berry who said it's time to reggae on the freeways, no business as usual. It's time to, it's well past time to make sure climate change is actually on everyone's mind, that we are taking action through our daily lives. in how we advocate for the planet, that we are, in fact, advocating for the planet and all of its inhabitants, including us. So I wanted to throw that out there. Um, I also wanted to say Happy Bastille Day, a day to celebrate freedom. And looking at, Teresa mentioned earlier, the fact that the US has the highest incarceration rate per capita in the world. Let's look at what it takes to bring down the prison population. Let's look at what it takes to bring down the prisons, period. Certainly, we need to accelerate ending privatized prisons, prisons for profit. We need to absolutely end that obscene practice, and we need to end slavery in prisons with forced labor, enriching corporations or the state through prisoners' sweat. So again, time to take action for freedom.
Yeah, and the cops are really upset the last couple of years that they've been called out for basically being the Blue Klan, but they are, and that has to stop. Which means, and it's gone for so long that they have to go. We have to have new substitutions for police forces.
Yeah, we do.
It's not a matter of training them; they're hopeless.
Well, we need to restructure that system, right? Because the current police system is based on slave patrols. And that is, in fact, how they continue to act. They are not protecting and serving, as several of the cases recently have come out around cops freezing when it came to actually protecting citizens instead of beating citizens during mass shootings, when cops are like, dang, that might be dangerous. We're not going to go there. They're not here to protect and serve. They are here to keep order, and it is their order that they are keeping. And so, yeah, time to absolutely reimagine and re-evolve, keeping our communities safe from harm. All right. What's the other thing? The other thing I wanted to make sure I got out there was going back to your very first story, Teresa, with the uh, oral contraceptives now being available. And I just want to recommend, I have just finished reading a book called The Patriarchs. And The Patriarchs is a look at um, how patriarchy has come to prominence and how it has um, evolved in various places, often as the result of European colonization, actually, as it took hold hard in Europe. So, The Patriarchs, The Origins of Inequality. It's a book by Angela Saini. It was published in February this year, and she's written some articles that have been published recently in like National Geographic and other magazines that have that in which she advances her point. But I want to throw out there one of the recurring issues that she found in her research was that when the state had interest in making sure the population was growing, the state came down hard to control women's sexuality. And I think that we cannot uh, uh, emphasize that enough. We certainly see that in the last 10 years, there's the uh, fear, unfounded white supremacist fear that white babies aren't being born, that white women need to buckle down and repopulate. That there's the great replacement theory that was put out there by Tucker Carlson and others, even more vile than him. And there's the fear that through sheer time and genetics and immigration and all of these things, that whites, well, gosh, are suited to be like maybe, a minority. And then what will happen? And so this fear was very present in the far right and amongst white supremacists, or amongst nationalists. And that is the background in which we see abortion laws being rewritten, abortion being outlawed, Roe being overturned, and the opposition to birth control and sex education and anything else that empowers people to actually take control of our sexuality, to allow folks with uteruses to decide when and where to bear children and how to deal with reproductive health. So I just want to make that tie very visible again. So all that said, what one more thing is, um, thanks for the birthday wish. This is my preferred birthday. I always wished I'd been born on Bastille Day instead of the middle of next week when it actually happens. Um, but thank you. It's close. It's very close. And Bastille Day, let's face facts, it's one of my favorite days of the year, right up there with Halloween and New Year's. I really like New Year's too. Anyways, I have I have Tarot. And what I have today is a reflection of actually a pretty sunny space. And I mean sunny in the good sense and not in the terrifying climate change sense. So, what we have is the Page of Cups. The Page of Cups lets us know that it's a good time to look within. We have the new moon coming up. I think it's happening Sunday or Monday. Um, I've forgotten what days it is. I think the new moon is Sunday. Uh, so we are heading on towards it, and it's always a good time to look within, right? We have sort of a monthly reset button. So through this weekend, reflect on where you're at. Reflect on where your feelings are, what's important to you, where your heart is leading you, what makes you happy, what makes you feel open and creative. It's time for that sort of fresh start and reassessment. It's also a time to emphasize playfulness and camaraderie, right, with your fellows, your co-humans and other comrades, right? Animal companions and all. It's time to share good feelings. We also have the Ace of Wands, which talks about really being open to that new creative flow that playfulness can bring. That it's important though to sort of keep a balance and not jump too far into the creative field so that you forget the other things that are important to you. Always balancing with your emotional self, and but allowing that playful spark to really push you forward on creative endeavors that you have been waiting for. That energy, this is the time. That energy is probably right there for you. So find a little quiet time for yourself and tap into it and see where it takes you. Again, always letting your heart sort of be your guiding post, your guiding light, your you know anchor into your heart and your feelings, and keep that in balance. That's what I'm trying to say. And then ultimately here we have the 6 of Cups. And the 6 of Cups is it's a card that says, "Hey, you have worked hard and you have a lot of treats." And maybe those are treats of good feelings, maybe those are actual physical good things. Maybe you have some assets, maybe you have strong community ties. You deserve them. And it's awesome that you have them.
Kitty deserves his treats.
And it's sort of the full belly rubbing satisfaction sort of card. But it also is a card that says make sure that you share, because as you experience abundance, uh, it's important to constantly pour it out so that you continue to have it. It's just one of those sort of metaphysical witchy principles by which we operate. Um, that to hoard, to hang on to all of the goodies and keep them for yourself is a way to kind of ensure that the energy stops and becomes static and you are no longer in the flow, as it were. To make sure that as you experience abundance, you share abundantly. And I think it's that whole rising tide floats all boats. Is that the way that goes? Um, Not like the rising tide that will, drown the East Coast. That's a different rising tide.
Please.
But the to share happiness, to share abundance, material wealth, emotional wealth, community wealth, to share in that is to make sure it continues to flow, and to that it continues the happy, explorative vibe that is going on for you this week. So that's what the cards say. With that, I think we're ready to close. Yes, yes.
I just want to say I'm grateful for y'all. I'm grateful for the weather that we've been getting. I know I sound like a Christian closing out a service or something, but seriously, I am. Because of the the seriousness of global warming. I'm very glad that this has been a mild summer here. I've been watching it very carefully. Maybe you have too, just checking out the forecast day to day, and I'll just try to be in the moment.
That's
It's
I think
beautiful.
important. Right.
Looking at the beautiful trees out front, and
I've been occasionally distracted because apparently we have some sparrows possibly nesting in the gutter directly outside of our window,
well,
because
that's why it was upside down.
because they keep sort of looking like they're about to crash on the window, and then they veer off. So there's that. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you all again next week.
Thank you.
Take good care.
Our love goes out to you and to all of the ships at sea.